To set up your first Active Directory forest, you need to have already installed Microsoft's Windows Server 2022 with your desired hostname and static IP settings and brought the server up to the latest patch and update. If you have not yet done this, please see the video, Installing and Configuring Windows Server 2022, Desktop Experience. If you have already installed an instance of Windows Server 2022 and configured its host name, static IP settings and time zone, and it is fully patched and updated, you are now ready to proceed with installing Active Directory. Make sure you have configured your first domain controller to use itself for DNS name resolution before you configure it as a domain controller. We will configure DNS forwarding for external name resolution later. Let's verify that we have all the prerequisites in place for setting up our first domain controller in our first Active Directory forest before we begin. Please note, if you are going to change the host name of the server, do it before you configure it as a domain controller. You should not change the host name of the server after it has become a domain controller because this can cause replication, name resolution and DNS issues. Open Server Manager and go to Roles and Features. Install Active Directory Domain Services.
2,000 years later.
Now click on the notification icon at the top of Server Manager and select Promote this server to a domain controller. If this is your very first domain controller, you want to select Add a new forest. If you only enter a domain name, verification of the forest will fail. You must enter it in the format, domain.forest. Forest could be like com, gov, edu, pony. Notice you can adjust the forest and domain functional levels here. The higher you raise the forest and domain functional level, the more modern features AD will support. But be careful, the higher you go, the more you will lose backward compatibility. Since this is your first domain controller, it must also be a global catalog server. The global catalog does not exist until we promote the first server to a domain controller. Note, this is our first domain controller, so the DNS zone data has not been written yet. Notice after the reboot that you can no longer sign onto the server locally. You can only sign into domain controllers using the domain. Notice when you sign in that Active Directory, RSAT, Remote Server Administration Tools, and new services have now been added. Notice that a primary DNS suffix has now been configured on the server. And when we ping the loopback localhost, it now returns the FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Let's add a user account to Active Directory using the GUI Active Directory Users and Computers, a duck tool. Now let's create a global security group in Active Directory and add the user account to it. Another effective tool for creating and managing objects in Active Directory is ADAC, the Active Directory Administrative Center. Using PowerShell, we can populate a large number of users and groups in Active Directory from a CSV file or an array by coding it within a script. because of how we set their profile path and home directory within the PowerShell script. When each user signs into any workstation in the domain, a directory for their user profile and home directory will be created within the network shared folder hosted on the server called Profile. This way, no matter where they sign in from, they will have access to their files, documents and preference settings hosted on the server. Domain admins is a group built into Active Directory. You will need to add users to this group who you trust to manage Active Directory. Any user added to this group has permission to create, modify and delete objects such as organizational units, global security groups and computer and user accounts. Domain admins can also create, edit and delete group policy objects. Let's take a look at the Active Directory DNS data that was written to the server during the domain controller promotion process. All servers, workstations, and devices that join the domain will have DNS records created within this zone. Remember to configure DNS forwarding if you want to allow those in your domain to access external domains and the Internet. Devices that join the domain will be using Active Directory integrated DNS hosted on your domain controllers as their primary name resolution service. So when those devices query resources outside your domain, it will require DNS forwarding.